title coming from 1 Samuel 17 is perseverance. I met another woman. And just talked a moment ago about feeling uncomfortable. Some of you right now are feeling just a little bit uncomfortable because you're wondering whether you need to go comfort, console, sit by, interact with my wife right now. It looks like she's sitting all by herself. And I just stood right here flat-footed, told every last one of you I met another. Laughing, some giggling laughter, some uncomfortable laughter. You don't know where to go with it. Well, I'll tell you that she's actually the one that introduced me to the other woman. And so you can be concerned about it if you'd like, but she's the one that started it all, that did the introductions, and that let me know that she wanted me to meet her. I just wanted to go to sleep. And my wife introduced me to a woman via TV movie, specifically Disney Plus, named Margaret Ederle. The movie is available and is based on a true story of a woman with that name, Margaret Ederle. And it's impactful and it's powerful because I would argue that this woman I'd never heard of in my life changed humanity for the Western culture. Near the very beginning, you see a sick child, that is the young Margaret, laying in a bed, has measles. She's supposed to lay there, and I know this is gonna shock everybody in here, but the child didn't do what she was supposed to do. She got up, went to the window, looked out the window, and saw a ferry boat on fire with smoke coming off of it. Her older sister, Meg, came into the room and told her to lay back down, to mind her P's. And then her mom came in the room and she said, Margaret said, I saw smoke. What's going on? And her mom told her that not only had the ferry caught on fire, but a number of people had died. It's a true incident that happened in New York, the Staten Island ferry. The ferry had caught on fire. And Margaret asked, why didn't people on the boat get off the boat? Well, why did they stay on the boat and die? It was mostly women. Why didn't they get off the boat? And her mom told me because they couldn't swim. That impacted her life, and the rest of her life would change the lives of so many others, because this woman who had the measles, when you have the measles, you're not supposed to get in the water because it can damage your hearing. She didn't care. They wouldn't let her in the pool to swim with the boys. She didn't care. They found a way to swim around a ferry so that they could get some free Nathan hot dogs. And when they wouldn't let her in the pool, they wouldn't let her swim with the boys, she ended up on a swimming team for girls that her daddy laughed at, and she ended up in a boiler room, and she came in last, race after race after race. But started to kick, and she started to learn how to swim, not because she had this crazy natural ability, but because she had something that every last one of us needs: perseverance. I know all of us have been gifted with some talents. There's some things that we need. There's some things that we want to be able to do. There's something that we want to be able to have. We, Colton, want to be valedictorian. I don't know how many of them here was other than him, but I'm just saying everybody is not naturally gifted, but everybody can persevere. For those students going off to school, Avery, for those getting ready to work towards getting a pilot's license, for those who are getting ready to get their feet deep into their career. Maybe you are doing some strange things with cadavers. I'm just saying, whatever it is that you're doing, all of us need to persevere so that when the things that you face in life that are hard, the things that are troubling, the things that are going the way you want them to go, you don't just give up and turn over. You do what Margaret Ederly did. You tune out the noise that says you can't, and you persevere. I really like this story. I really appreciate the fact that this woman went from not being able to be on the swim team to passing everybody and making state records and world records. And she learned to persevere. But I also considered the fact, this is not the first time I've heard this story about perseverance. I know the story of perseverance. I've heard it in God's word. I thought of 1 Samuel chapter 17. And I'm going to read it out of the New King James Version. You may see some other words that are similar. And I don't know how much Bible reading you've been doing. I've been encouraging you to read through the Bible in a year, but we may, if we have time, get all the way through this chapter. 1 Samuel chapter 17 out of the New King James Version. Now, the Philistines, say, they're not like us. Say, they're not like us. Say, they're not in our group. The Philistines gathered their armies together to battle, and were gathered at Soka, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Soka and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. The Philistines stood up on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. Here we are with two armies, one on one side, one on the other. Valley in between. Verse 4, and a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath. Say, Goliath. From Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. We're talking about 10 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. Let me just tell you, this brother's spear was over 15 pounds, just the tip of it. And the bronze that he wore was probably heavier than most of us could carry. And he had bronze armor, verse 6, on his legs, and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. Now the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and an iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels, and a shield bearer went before him. Verse 8, then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you, the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. Verse 10. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. I don't know who your Goliaths are in your life. I don't know whether it's an employer. I don't know if it's people who bully you. I don't know if it's something that you prayed for that you have not gotten yet you need. I don't know what the Goliaths are in your life. I don't know if it's a challenge being able to read. I don't know if it's difficulty being able to take a test. I don't know if it's difficulty being able to not only deal with those who don't seem kind to you and love them back, but whatever the Goliaths are in your life, God, through perseverance, can overcome your Goliaths. Verse 11, when Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. They were dismayed and greatly afraid. Let me just try to bake this cake of perseverance and tell you that the first ingredient in the cake is the ingredient of hope. The text says they were dismayed and greatly afraid. We're talking about soldiers. Armies on mountainsides with a valley in between, and this big old 10-foot bronze iron-clad Goliath stands up in front of them and declares, give me somebody to fight. And the soldiers lost hope. Brothers and sisters, you will never persevere if you lose hope. Hope is the first ingredient in the cake of perseverance. If you want to be able to persevere, you've got to have hope. In order to be able to make it, hope has got to be something that you hold on to. Hope is what helps you persevere. Margaret Ederle started off with the measles, and she struggled to live. Before she ever got into anybody's pool, a doctor went up to her room, interacted with her, came back down, asked for some water, and when her sister said, how long does she have? The doctor said, don't worry, I'll be with her, but the next time I come down, it's because she can't fight the measles. That whole family was in danger of losing hope. If you lose hope before perseverance starts, you'll never win the battle. If you lose hope before things get going, you'll never be able to make it. No matter what job you need to be able to stay on over the years, no matter what relationship that needs to be able to be bound together and stay together, no matter how you try in school to be able to persevere, you have to have hope. And sometimes we lose hope before the battle even starts. We can't persevere because we lose hope before we even get going. Before we even go to our first class. Before we even make it on the job, we lose hope. They were dismayed and they were greatly afraid. These are soldiers. They're supposed to be able to fight. But they lost hope. Verse 12, now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem of Judah, whose name was Jesse, and who had 8 sons. And the man was old, advanced in years. In the days of Saul, the 3 oldest sons of Jesse had gone to follow Saul to the battle. The names of the 3 sons who went into the battle were Eliab the firstborn, next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. Some of you lose hope because you think you don't have what your siblings have. Some of you lose hope because you think just because of what you're missing that others have, you lose hope and you won't persevere. David was the youngest. And the 3 oldest followed Saul, but David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. I've told you before, there's nothing that you can do in this world that God would have you do that's insignificant. He went to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem and was faithful in that. And the Pharisees drew near and presented themselves. The Philistine drew near and presented himself 40 days, morning and evening. Some of you lose hope because you get beat down time and time again. Just seems like no matter how hard you try, you just keep facing the same thing over and over. Then Jesse said to his son David, take now to your brothers an ephah of dried grain and these 10 leaves, and run to your brothers at the camp, and carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them. Sorry, youth, there's no cell phones at this point. This is how they got messages. Now Saul, and they said all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. Verse 20, so David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with a keeper, and took the things and went to Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp, and the army was going out to the fight, shouting for the battle. He left the sheep with a keeper. If God gives you an assignment, don't think that you can just give up on the assignment that he's given you and that it's not a small thing. It might seem like a small thing, but if God's giving you an assignment, before you do something else, make sure your assignment has someone to complete it for you. Verse 21, the Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. Verse 22, and David left the supplies in the hand of the supply keeper. He ran to the army, came and greeted his brothers. Then he talked with them, and there was a champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines. And he spoke according to the same words that David heard them. All the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. I told you about when God repeats something, he means it. They weren't just afraid, they were dreadfully afraid. They absolutely lost hope. You will never persevere without it. Verse 25, and the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills the king will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. Is there anybody that would love to not pay taxes? Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in this manner, saying, so shall it be done for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David. Now the battle is between Israel and their army, and the Philistines and their army. And Goliath is the champion of the Philistine army. And Eliab is a member of the Israelite army, ought to be getting angry at Goliath and the Philistines. But he gets angry at his brother. Okay, siblings. For those who have struggles and challenges with family members, for those that have issues with people that are close to you, for those that have a hard time, here it is in the text. Eliab's anger was aroused against David. David hadn't done anything wrong. He was doing what his daddy told him to do. David hadn't done anything wrong, and here it is that his big brother is getting on his case. And he said, why do you come down here? And with whom have you left the sheep in the wilderness? Come on, Elijah, you don't care about the sheep. You're just angry at your brother. I know your pride and the insolence of your heart. Don't folk think that they know us? And don't we have difficulty persevering and having hope when the members of our family who ought to be rooting for us are giving us a hard time? Isn't it hard to have hope when those that should be on your side are giving you a hard time? Have you come down here to see the battle? And David said, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? Then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And those people answered him as the first ones did. And when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul, and he sent for them. Saul heard that this young Israelite, David, was asking what to do. Then David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. I know you think I'm taking entirely too long to walk through this text, but I really hope that you'll have perseverance, and I hope that you won't give up hope. And the second thing is not what your mama or what your daddy told you to do, but it's outlined in the verse I just read, verse 32. And it's to be haughty. Haughty. The second ingredient of perseverance after having hope is to be haughty. Kind of like pride and having an attitude that nobody can tell you what to do. Margaret Ederle had the attitude that her daddy couldn't tell her what to do, that the coach that tried to keep her from swimming the English Channel couldn't tell her what to do. The attitude of being haughty, the way you're going to persevere, is in part by having hope, but it's also in being haughty. Brothers and sisters, I'm telling you, there's a way to have Christian haughtiness, and we ought to recognize that the God we serve, when he invests in us, we are somebody. You should see us when we try to play ping pong. We have the attitude that nobody can beat me. We have the attitude that I'm the best there's ever been. Now, we might not do it, but we've got the attitude that we can do anything but fail. We ought to have an attitude of hope that'll help us persevere, but also an attitude of haughtiness. David said to Saul, now, Saul is the king. Saul should have been telling David what to do. But David said to Saul, don't worry. Brothers and sisters, it's not about how physically big you are. It doesn't matter. I appreciate the fact, can you imagine somebody Heston size on the football field telling somebody Carter size on the football field, I got this. Haughtiness is recognizing that God and you can beat anybody. Haughtiness is recognizing that it's not about your physical attributes. It's not about what you think you can do. It's the attitude of perseverance. I gotta hump this up. I gotta get to a close. But it's having the attitude and recognizing that you and God can't be beat by anybody. You can stand up in this world, and with God on your side, you can persevere. With hope, with haughtiness, I wish I could walk through the rest of the text and tell you the rest of the story. The rest of the story is this young man, David. Not only did he have hope, not only did he have haughtiness, he absolutely had the attitude that he had to. He had hope, he had haughtiness, and he had a have-to attitude. Margaret Ederle swam the English Channel 2 hours faster than any man had ever done it because she had hope, she had haughtiness, and she had a have-to attitude. After having been denied Olympic gold, even when she was the world record holder, she had a have-to attitude about the English Channel. When she went at it, And her coach wasn't even on her side. She still had a have-to attitude. Her record stood for 81 years before another woman would beat her record crossing the English Channel. She crossed faster than any man had crossed the English Channel. And I said she changed the Western Hemisphere because at that time, people thought women couldn't do anything. People thought women needed to stay in their place. That's why they shouldn't swim, because they had no place in the water. Well, here we are, recognizing that not manatee, but humanity can do anything. And part of how we learned it is because a woman named Margaret Ederle ended up having the largest ticker tape parade that's ever been seen in New York City. And they did it because she swam the English Channel because she had a have-to attitude. She persevered through jellyfish. She persevered when it seemed like she couldn't make it. She persevered after having gone back to shore one time and watching her sponsors walk away. David persevered when the entire army was scared. He stood up, got 5 smooth stones, and stood against somebody much larger than him that the entire army was afraid of. When the king was afraid, David had hope, had haughtiness, and had a have-to attitude that you will not stand against God of Israel. And brothers and sisters, when we have hope, when we have haughtiness, when we have a have-to attitude, nobody can stop us. Nobody can make us not make it. Nobody can keep us from persevering. Jesus Christ himself stood at Calvary. He himself was hope. And all of the disciples lost hope because he died. And the one they thought would be their king hung his head at Calvary. But then he gave us hope because he was raised again on the 3rd day with all power, heaven and earth, in his hands. He was haughty in that he looked the devil in his eye and said, "You cannot have me. God is who I serve." Raised again with all power, heaven and earth, in his hands. And finally, he had a have-to attitude. Because the only way any of us could be saved is because he had to give his life so that we could have a relationship with Jesus the Christ. No matter what you face in life, I hope you'll persevere with hope, godly haughtiness, and a have-to attitude. Don't trust in you. Trust in him